Right now, somewhere inside your chest, your arteries might already be aging faster than the rest of you. Not because of anything dramatic, not because of one bad meal or one missed walk. Quietly, invisibly. And here's the unsettling part. You could be feeling completely fine while it happens. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because I'm going to show you two specific foods that research suggests may actually help. Not vague advice you've heard 100 times. Two specific foods and the exact reason each one matters. I'm Dr. Robert Vance, and if you've spent any time with me before, I don't like scaring people with headlines. I like handing people something they can actually use. So that's what today is about. But first, I want you to understand something most people over 60 never get told clearly. And once you hear it, you'll understand exactly why these two foods matter so much. Picture a garden hose. When it's new, it bends easily. Water moves through it smoothly, adjusting to whatever pressure you send its way. Now picture that same hose left outside for years, baking in the sun. It stiffens. It cracks a little. Water still gets through, but the hose is working harder to do the same job it used to do effortlessly. That's remarkably close to what can happen inside your arteries as the years go by, a process called arterial stiffening. And here's what surprised even some of my colleagues when this research first came out. This process often begins decades before 60. It doesn't announce itself. There's no ache, no signal, nothing you'd notice on an ordinary Tuesday morning. But something shifts around this stage of life. The pace can quietly speed up. I know that might sound worrying, and I don't say it to alarm you. I say it because there's something you can actually do about it, and most people never hear the real reason why it works. Let me tell you about a patient of mine. I'll call her Linda, though that isn't her real name. She was 63. Active. Walked her dog every single morning without fail. She came in for a routine visit, expecting nothing out of the ordinary, the kind of appointment you almost cancel because you feel fine, except her numbers had crept up over the past year, just slightly, enough to notice. I feel fine, she told me, almost defensively. I don't understand how this happened. And that right there is the heart of today's video. You can feel completely fine and still have changes happening beneath the surface. But here's what changed everything for Linda, and I think it might change something for you too. Before I tell you what shifted for her, let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body during this stiffening process. Because once you understand this, the two foods I'm about to share will make complete sense, instead of just being something you heard once and forgot by dinner. Inside the walls of your arteries sits a thin, quietly powerful lining called the endothelium. Think of it as the inner skin of that garden hose we talked about. This lining does something remarkable. It produces a molecule called nitric oxide, which tells your blood vessels when to relax and widen, letting blood move through more easily. It's essentially your body's built-in flexibility system. Here's what most people never realize. As we age, that lining can become less efficient at producing nitric oxide, less flexibility, more resistance. Your arteries start behaving more like that stiff, sun-baked hose instead of the supple one you had decades earlier. And for some people, fatty deposits build up along artery walls over the years too, narrowing the space blood has to travel through even further. Now here's a question I want you to actually sit with for a second. If your arteries have been quietly stiffening for years without a single symptom, what else might your body be trying to tell you that you simply haven't learned to listen for yet? That question is exactly why I wanted to make this video. Because researchers have spent years studying which everyday foods may support this exact system, the flexibility of your arteries and the strength of that inner lining. And two specific foods keep showing up in that research again and again for two completely different reasons. Once you understand both, you'll see why using them together may matter more than either one alone. But before I reveal them, let's clear up a myth I hear constantly, one that quietly sabotages a lot of well-meaning people. Many folks believe artery health is purely about subtraction. Cut the butter, skip the bacon, done. But that's only half the story. And honestly, it might be the less important half. Artery health isn't only about what you remove from your plate. It's just as much about what you actively add, the raw materials your body needs to keep producing nitric oxide, to keep that inner lining strong, to keep inflammation down inside the vessel walls. Avoiding fried food alone doesn't build a healthier artery. You have to actively feed the system that's doing the repair work. So here's the first food, and I think the mechanism behind it is going to surprise you. Fatty fish. Salmon, sardines, mackerel. You've probably heard someone say fish is good for your heart before. In that vague, forgettable way, health advice usually gets repeated. But here's what most people never get told. Fatty fish is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, specifically two forms called EPA and DHA. These aren't just generic healthy fats floating around doing nothing specific. Research suggests omega-3s may help support the flexibility of your artery walls and may help reduce inflammation inside the blood vessels themselves. Remember that inner lining, the one responsible for nitric oxide? Some studies suggest omega-3 fatty acids may help support the healthy function of that very lining, the same lining that starts losing efficiency as we age. Think of it like a conditioning treatment for that garden hose. It won't undo years of sun damage overnight. And I want to be honest with you about that, because I never want to oversell what a single food can do. But as part of a broader pattern, the research here is genuinely compelling, more compelling than most people assume. A reasonable target, and one many guidelines point toward, is roughly 2 servings of fatty fish a week, about the size of a deck of cards each time. If fish isn't currently part of your routine, you don't need to force 2 servings starting tomorrow. Start with 1. Build from there. Here's something that trips people up, though. Not all fish carry this benefit equally. Tilapia and catfish are perfectly fine lean proteins, but they don't come close to the omega-3 content of a cold water, fattier fish like salmon or sardines. So if you've been eating fish for years and wondering why nobody ever mentions artery support in the same breath, that might be exactly why. Now, quick question for you, and I'd genuinely love to know the answer. Out of everything so far, what surprised you more? That this stiffening can begin decades before symptoms show up, or that fish isn't just generally healthy, but may target this specific flexibility system directly? Drop it in the comments. I read them, and they shape a lot of what I cover in future videos. But that's only half the story, and I'd argue the second food matters just as much, maybe more, because it works through a completely different pathway, one that connects directly back to that nitric oxide system we already talked about. The second food is leafy green vegetables: spinach, arugula, Swiss chard. I know. After the science behind omega-3s, leafy greens might sound almost too simple. But stay with me, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. Leafy greens are naturally rich in dietary nitrates. Once you eat them, your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, the exact same molecule we've been talking about this entire video, the one responsible for keeping your blood vessels relaxed and open. So while omega-3s may help support the health of the vessel lining itself, nitrates from leafy greens may help directly fuel the very system that lining depends on. 2 different mechanisms, same goal. Here's what surprised many of my own patients when I first explained this. Researchers have specifically studied dietary nitrates in relation to blood pressure and vascular flexibility, and some studies have actually measured real changes in blood vessel function after regular nitrate-rich vegetable intake. This isn't fringe science. It's been actively studied for well over a decade. A practical target is at least 1 substantial serving a day, roughly a palm-packed handful, whether that's spinach wilted into a soup, arugula tossed into a salad, or Swiss chard sautéed with a little olive oil and garlic. And here's a small detail that surprises almost everyone. Cooking leafy greens lightly doesn't destroy the nitrate content the way people assume. In some cases, mild cooking actually makes those nitrates easier for your body to absorb compared to eating everything raw. Let's bust one more myth here, because this one causes real confusion. Some people avoid leafy greens entirely if they're on blood-thinning medication, worried greens are somehow dangerous for their heart. But the nuance matters. The concern isn't that leafy greens are bad for your arteries. It's about consistency of vitamin K intake for people on specific medications. If that applies to you, that's a conversation for your own doctor, not something to navigate based on a video, mine included. For most people, without that particular concern, leafy greens remain one of the most consistently recommended foods for supporting vascular health. Now let's go back to Linda for a moment, because I think you'll want to know what happened next. We didn't overhaul her entire kitchen. No complicated meal plan, no extreme diet. We talked about swapping her Friday takeout for a simple baked salmon dinner, something she actually grew to enjoy, and adding a spinach or arugula base to her salads most days instead of occasionally. Small, sustainable, nothing dramatic. 6 months later, at her follow-up, her numbers had improved. Now, I'll be honest with you, because I think honesty matters more than hype. That wasn't from two foods alone. She'd also increased her walking slightly and became more mindful of sodium. But these two foods were a meaningful, foundational part of what shifted for her. Here's what most people miss, though, and it's exactly the kind of thing that quietly cancels out everything we've just talked about. There's one mistake I see constantly, one that can undo the benefit of even the best food choices. People discover a beneficial food, get excited, and go all in on that single thing while ignoring everything else working against them. They'll eat salmon religiously, but drink barely any water, run on 5 cups of coffee, and otherwise eat a diet loaded with processed, sodium-heavy convenience food. One good food layered on top of an unsupportive pattern isn't going to do the heavy lifting alone. These two foods work best as part of a broader rhythm, not as a magic patch over habits pulling in the opposite direction. And there's a second overlooked piece worth mentioning, because food isn't the whole picture. Movement plays a role too. You don't need to become a marathon runner in your 60s. But regular movement, even a brisk 20 to 30 minute walk most days, has been associated in research with improved vascular flexibility, working through some of the same nitric oxide pathways we've discussed today. Food and movement aren't separate conversations. They tend to reinforce each other. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. Your arteries age at their own pace, shaped by genetics, yes, but also shaped significantly by daily choices that quietly accumulate over years, often without a single symptom to warn you along the way. Fatty fish, through omega-3 fatty acids, may help support the flexibility and function of your artery walls. Leafy greens, through dietary nitrates, may help fuel your body's natural nitric oxide production, the very system responsible for keeping those vessels relaxed and open. Two foods, two mechanisms. The same underlying goal, supporting how well your arteries function as you move through this stage of life and beyond. I want to be clear about what this isn't. This isn't a cure. It isn't a guarantee. It isn't a replacement for your doctor or your medication. What it is a realistic, evidence-informed way to support your arteries as you age. And honestly, I'd rather give you something real than something flashy that falls apart the moment you look closely at it. If you have existing heart conditions, take blood-thinning medication, or have specific dietary restrictions, please talk to your own physician before making significant changes. Everything here is meant to inform you, not replace personalized medical care. Here's my question for you before you go. Of these two foods, which one do you already eat regularly, and which one might deserve a little more intention starting this week? Awareness without action doesn't move the needle much. If you already eat plenty of greens but rarely touch fish, now you know exactly where to focus. If it's the opposite, that's just as useful to know. I'd genuinely love to hear your answer, so tell me in the comments. I read every one, and some of the best conversations I have happen right there. If today helped you understand your own arteries a little better, consider subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next. Because next time, we're going to talk about a quiet, everyday habit many people over 60 don't realize might be working against their blood pressure without them ever noticing it happening. You'll want to see that one. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.